I decided to take a solo journey to the hills, hoping to enjoy some calm and solitude. I packed my bag with essentials like a small tent, a sleeping bag, a torch, some food, water, and a map. I also brought my phone, though I knew it wouldn't work in such a remote location. I drove to the closest village and left my car at the trail's starting point. Checking my map, I saw there was a lake roughly 12 miles away where I planned to set up camp for the night. With excitement and a sense of adventure, I began my hike. The weather was ideal, sunny with a cool breeze, and the scenery was stunning. Along the way, I spotted deer, chipmunks, and a variety of birds, feeling deeply connected to nature. After trekking for about 4 hours, I arrived at the lake. It was a mesmerizing sight, bordered by tall evergreen trees and mirroring the clear sky above. I found a level spot near the water, pitched my tent, and decided to wade into the lake. The water was icy but refreshing. Afterward, I dried off, changed into warm clothes, lit a small fire, and cooked some canned soup for dinner. As I ate, I watched the sun dip below the horizon, filling the sky with vibrant colors. Feeling content and at peace, I eventually crawled into my sleeping bag and switched off my torch. The night was silent, with only the occasional chirp of crickets or the hoot of an owl. I closed my eyes and drifted off. Sometime during the night, I woke to a loud crash outside my tent, like something heavy moving through the underbrush. My heart raced as I grabbed my torch, switched it on, and pointed it toward the tent flap. A large shadow loomed just outside. It looked like a bear. I heard a deep, guttural growl that made my skin crawl. Frozen with fear, I silently prayed the bear wouldn't notice me. I recalled reading that bears are often more frightened of people than the reverse, and loud noises could scare them away. Summoning all my courage, I shouted, "Go away, bear! Leave!" I also banged my torch against the tent pole to make more noise. To my immense relief, the bear seemed startled and retreated into the woods, crashing through the bushes as it fled. I exhaled deeply, thanking my lucky stars. Checking my phone, I saw it was nearly dawn. Not wanting to risk another encounter, I hurriedly packed up my things, stuffed my tent into my bag, grabbed the map, and began retracing my steps along the trail. That experience taught me an important lesson. Never venture into the wilderness alone without proper preparation, including bear spray. I always enjoyed hiking, especially in the fall when the leaves turned vibrant shades and the air felt crisp and cool. One day, I decided to go on a solo hike in a nearby woodland area to soak in some quiet time. I packed my bag with essentials: snacks, water, a flashlight, and a map. I also brought my phone, though I knew the reception would likely be poor out there. I set off on my hike around midday, following a clearly marked trail that led further into the forest. The scenery was breathtaking, and I felt calm and content. I snapped a few pictures on my phone and tried sending them to friends, but they wouldn't go through. I shrugged it off and kept walking. About an hour into the hike, I came to a fork in the path. A sign pointed the way. One path led to Lakeview Trail on the left, and the other to Ridge Trail on the right. Wanting to see the lake, I chose the left trail. I walked for roughly half an hour before arriving at a beautiful clearing overlooking the lake. The water was surrounded by trees and hills, and the surface mirrored the clear sky perfectly. I took out my phone to capture the scene, but something felt off. The time on my phone read 3:15 p.m. That didn't make sense. I'd left the fork at 1 p.m., and the hike to the lake should have taken only 30 minutes. Had I been walking slower than I realized, or had I lost track of time? I looked at my map, confirming the lake wasn't far from the fork. None of it added up. A shiver ran down my spine as unease crept in. Deciding it was best to return to the fork, I packed up and retraced my steps. This time, I reached the fork in about 25 minutes. The timeline baffled me. It didn't align with how long it should have taken either way. Feeling unsettled, I opted to head back to the starting point and call it a day. It wasn't the most terrifying experience, but it was definitely one of the strangest. I had visited many trails and parks before, but I had never explored the one my friend suggested. Tom mentioned that it offered breathtaking views and abundant wildlife. He also cautioned me that the hike would be challenging and advised me to prepare thoroughly. He handed me a map and clear directions, recommending I visit on a weekday to avoid crowds. Following his advice, I chose to go on a Wednesday morning. I packed my bag with water, snacks, a flashlight, a small knife, and a first aid kit. After driving for nearly an hour, I arrived at the entrance to the park. The parking area was empty, and the air felt crisp and refreshing. I could hear birds chirping and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Consulting the map, I saw that the trail began at a wooden bridge crossing a small stream. I followed the path until I reached the bridge, which looked aged and a little fragile, though it seemed solid enough to cross. I stepped carefully across it and entered the forest. The trail was narrow, winding, and mostly uphill. Tall, thick trees surrounded me, their canopy blocking much of the sunlight. I felt both awe and a touch of nervousness as I wandered through the lush greenery. When I checked my watch, I saw it was close to noon. After hiking for about 2 hours, I began to feel tired and hungry. I searched for a place to rest and noticed a clearing ahead with a large rock that looked perfect for a break. I walked over, set my bag down, and took out a sandwich and water bottle. Sitting on the rock, I enjoyed my lunch and sipped water. Once finished, I stood up and began to pack up my things. Suddenly, a loud growl erupted from behind me. Turning around, I froze at the sight of a bear. My heart raced as I quickly reached into my bag and grabbed the bear spray. Pointing it at the bear, I pressed the trigger, releasing a stream of pepper spray into its face. The bear roared in pain and retreated. Not wasting a second, I dashed down the trail, heading back toward the bridge as quickly as possible. My only thought was to reach my car and safety. To this day, I often wonder how things might have turned out if I hadn't brought that bear spray with me. I always loved hiking in the hills, especially during autumn when the leaves turned vibrant shades and the air felt fresh and cool. One day, I decided to take a solo trip to a secluded trail I'd heard was both stunning and tough. I packed my bag with everything I'd need: water, snacks, a flashlight, a small blade, a map, a compass, and a tent. I set off early, aiming to reach the top by midday. The trail was rugged and steep, but I enjoyed the challenge and the picturesque surroundings. Along the way, I spotted some wildlife, rabbits, chipmunks, and a few birds flitting between the trees. However, I also noticed unusual marks carved into some of the trunks, like deep scratches or cuts. I wondered if they were made by animals or perhaps by people. I arrived at the summit around 11 a.m. and was greeted by an incredible view of the valley below. The sight was worth every step of the climb. I snapped some photos and ate my packed lunch, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. I lingered, savoring the stillness, until a sharp noise behind me broke my reverie. It sounded like a snapping branch or loose rocks tumbling. Turning around, I saw a man, likely in his late 50s, standing only a short distance away. He wore a weathered gray jacket, old jeans, and heavy boots. His face was hard, his eyes dark and cold. In his hand, he gripped a large blade that looked like a machete. He said nothing, just stared at me with a menacing intensity. My stomach dropped, and a surge of panic overtook me. Grabbing my backpack, I bolted toward the far side of the summit, desperate to find another path down. He followed close behind, his pace swift, When I reached the edge of the cliff, I realized there was no alternate trail. The only route was the one I'd used to climb up. I turned and saw him approaching, his face twisted into a sinister grin. He raised his machete and snarled, "Welcome to my mountain." Fear gave me strength. I screamed and hurled my backpack at him, hoping to slow him down, but he dodged it with ease. Left with no choice, I reached for the knife in my pocket. As he lunged at me, I plunged it into his chest. He let out a pained gasp, dropping his machete, but grabbed my arm in an attempt to pull me down with him. Summoning all my strength, I punched him squarely in the face, breaking free. He stumbled backward, lost his footing, and tumbled down the slope, leaving a streak of blood in his wake. Shaking and out of breath, I stared at my bloodied knife. A wave of nausea hit me. I had just taken someone's life. I didn't know who he was or why he had attacked me. Perhaps he was an unhinged recluse who resented outsiders. It didn't matter. All I wanted was to get off that mountain. I grabbed my bag and raced down the trail as fast as I could, praying he was alone and there would be no more dangers. I reached my car by 3 p.m., threw my gear inside, and drove home without looking back. I never told a soul about what happened that day. I had visited countless parks and trails, but this time I craved a new experience. I had heard whispers about a remote mountain range far to the north, a place rarely explored by others. It was said to be a tough but rewarding trek, offering breathtaking views and abundant wildlife. I decided to embark on a week-long solo journey there. I carefully packed my backpack with everything I'd need: a tent, sleeping bag, portable stove, food, water, a map, compass, flashlight, knife, and a first aid kit. I also brought my camera, eager to capture the beauty of the landscape. I drove to a small town where I left my car, then boarded a nearly empty bus to reach the trailhead. A few local passengers eyed me curiously, likely wondering why I had come. When the bus dropped me off, I began walking along a dirt road leading to the trail. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the mountains, and the crisp air carried a faint chill. A gentle breeze brushed against my face as I picked up my pace, hoping to find a suitable camping spot before nightfall. After an hour, I reached the start of the trail, marked by a weathered wooden sign reading "Caution, do not enter." Ignoring the warning, I pressed on. The trail was narrow and steep, weaving through thick forests and jagged slopes. I treaded carefully, avoiding missteps on the uneven terrain. The towering trees blocked much of the sunlight, casting the area in a shadowy gloom. Strange sounds came from the woods, leaves rustling and branches snapping. I tried to stay calm, convincing myself it was just the usual noise of nature. Another hour passed before I spotted a clearing up ahead. It seemed like a perfect campsite, a flat patch of grass encircled by trees and shrubs, with a small stream nearby where I could refill my water. Relieved, I decided to set up camp there. As I unpacked my gear to pitch the tent, something unusual caught my eye: a strange pile in the woods near the clearing. Curious, I walked closer to investigate. To my horror, it was a heap of bones, with a human skull resting at the center. Fear and revulsion washed over me as I realized the grim nature of my discovery. Heart racing, I stepped away, my mind racing with questions. What could have happened here? Who or what had left those remains? I quickly decided I couldn't stay. Hastily repacking my gear, I left the clearing and retraced my steps, hiking back the way I had come. To this day, I don't know the story behind those bones, and I don't think I ever want to. It was supposed to be a simple outing, just me and my small bag, exploring the trails near my neighborhood. I had done it many times before and felt confident navigating the area. I set out early that morning, enjoying the perfect weather. The skies were clear, the air was crisp, and the cheerful songs of birds filled the air. I felt at peace, soaking in the fresh breeze and beautiful surroundings. I stuck to a familiar route, passing through clusters of rocks and tall trees until I came to a split in the trail. This time, I chose the left path, which I knew was more isolated and challenging. I wanted to push myself and discover something different. The left trail was narrower and steeper than the right, with sharp twists and sudden turns that made it hard to see what lay ahead. I had to step carefully to avoid slipping or stumbling on the rough ground, but I enjoyed the sense of adventure. The challenge was exhilarating. I thought I was alone on this path, but it turned out I wasn't. As I continued walking, I heard a faint rustling sound behind me, as if something was moving in the brush. When I turned around, I saw nothing. I brushed it off, assuming it was probably a small animal like a chipmunk or a bird. I pressed on. A few minutes later, I reached a curve in the trail. As soon as I rounded the bend, a sudden, sharp pain shot through my leg. Startled, I looked down, expecting to see some kind of animal, maybe a stray dog or a fox, but there was nothing there. Confusion and fear swept over me. What could have caused the pain? I frantically scanned the area, but the clearing was eerily quiet and empty. My heart raced as I realized I was completely alone. Ignoring the pain, I turned and hurried back down the trail. It felt as though something had bitten me, yet there was no mark, no wound, no blood, nothing to explain what had just happened. That strange encounter left me shaken and questioning everything. I had no logical explanation for the event, and it made me start to believe in things beyond the ordinary. Whatever happened that day remains a mystery I'll never forget. I chose to go for a hike alone in the nearby woods, wanting some solitude and calm. I packed my bag with a few essentials: snacks, a water bottle, a flashlight, and a map. I also brought my phone, though I knew the reception would be poor in the area. Around midday, I began my hike, following a clear trail that led deeper into the forest. The surroundings were stunning, and I felt peaceful and content. I stopped occasionally to take pictures with my phone, planning to share them later with friends. I didn't encounter anyone else on the trail, which suited me perfectly. I liked having the place to myself. After about an hour, I reached a point where the path split. A small sign pointed to the right with the words, "Pond View." Curious to see the pond, I took the right path. The trail grew narrower and steeper, so I had to tread carefully. The trees thickened, blocking much of the sunlight. Still, I wasn't worried, thinking I'd reconnect with the main path soon. I continued for another 30 minutes, but the pond was nowhere in sight. The trail seemed endless, winding deeper into the forest. A sense of unease crept over me. Something felt off. I checked my map, but it didn't show any pond or split in the path. That's when I realized my mistake. I had taken a wrong turn and was now lost. Trying to stay calm, I decided to backtrack and return to the main trail. But after a while, I noticed that nothing looked familiar. It was as if the trail itself had shifted. A wave of fear hit me. What was happening? Could someone be playing a joke on me? I quickened my pace, desperately trying to find a way out, but the forest only seemed to grow more confusing. Just as I was starting to lose hope, I heard something. A car horn blaring somewhere nearby. Though I didn't know why the driver honked, the sound was a lifeline. I followed the noise and soon spotted a road through the trees. Bursting out of the woods onto the asphalt, I felt immense relief. I flagged down a passing car, and they kindly drove me back home. To this day, I don't know what went wrong. How did I end up on that strange path? Did the trail really change, or was it all in my head? I have no answers, and honestly, I'm not eager to find out. One thing is certain, I won't be hiking alone again.